Hello, everyone, and welcome to our stream today. Good morning if you're joining us here in Finland, but also good, very much evening if you happen to be joining us from the US. We have a great stream prepared for you guys today. We're going to delve into a lot of topics, some of which were submitted by our staff and community here. Then Zsuzsa has also prepared a great presentation to take us through her journey in esports, what she does with the General Consulate of Finland, and just generally how Finnish businesses are entering that very unique market. So I guess without further ado, I won't take more of your time. I would like to introduce and very much welcome Zsuzsa James, who works with the General Consulate of Finland in Los Angeles, focusing on gaming and the esports market. So thank you for joining us, Zsuzsa.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you so much. And oh boy, did you set the bar high. I hope I can live up to it at least a little bit there. But yes, thank you for having me, and good morning, of course, hyvää huomenta, and to all of you tuning in from Finland. Indeed, as Richard said, I am here on the West Coast, so it's a little later here. But this is such a great great privilege to be talking to the next generation of esports movers and shakers from Finland. So very excited to be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you.
And I think that I guess I can just jump into this, right?
Yep,
so I'll just go ahead and let's see if I can right off the bat. That's probably the easiest to find. Okay. So let me know if it works.
Yep, I can see everything.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So before I kick off, just a quick preamble that that Richard, again, very generous to kind of like gave me a little bit of a free rein on this, which he may or may not come to regret. We shall see. But of course, as he said, I will be touching on on kind of like my journey in the industry, which is definitely a little uncommon, perhaps. And I wanted to be very mindful of who the audience is, who you guys are out there who are watching this, and there's quite a lot to the industry. There's quite a lot of great questions that came in that I look forward to getting to. But I figured that today I wanted to just share, the things that I've come to learn throughout my journey, the things that I know now and have come to witness here, here in the US, kind of give a little overview of that, and hopefully some of it will be useful. But that is really, I wanted to give this kind of like career spotlight, or however you want to call it, about what I do, because as indeed as Richard mentioned, I am the trade commissioner for video games and esports with the Consulate General of Finland in LA. It is a mouthful, so don't worry about it. It's hard to remember that. But and at this point, you might be wondering, what in the name of heck is that? How does that work? What does that do? And all kinds of things. So, which is a question that I get often. So we're gonna get into that as well. But yes, so hello again from my side, and yeah, let's go. Let's see how we get on with this. So hopefully I can impart some interesting stuff. So the three things that I kind of wanted to cover today is, and I wanted to be mindful of leaving time for the Q&A at the end, is basically, first of all, Team Finland, which is an organization that we are part of as part of the consulate. Then talk a little bit about the state of esports as it is today, obviously mainly focusing on the US and Finland, just looking at the ecosystem a little bit and some career opportunities in this space. And then in the end, I will kind of like walk you guys through a little bit of my journey and how I got here, and everyone's journey is unique, and hopefully there is something to learn from all of it. But yeah, starting with kind of kicking off with what Team Finland is, and this is probably the first time this kind of like name came up because I was talking about the Consulate General before. So what the hell is Team Finland, right? You'd be right to ask. Well, Team Finland is actually the umbrella term or an umbrella organization for a number of public organizations in Finland whose job is basically to help and support Finnish companies in their internationalization efforts. We, with the Consulate General here in LA, are part of the US missions of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of which, of course, there are others around the world. But then Team Finland also consists of other ministries, Business Finland, Finnvera, TESI, the PRH, and many other organizations, all of whom kind of work together in support of Finnish export into different markets around the world. Some of the services that we provide, and again, I will go into it a little bit later, how this translates to my work in particular in games and esports, but on a high level, Team Finland as a whole focuses on providing different services, of course, the different life cycle stage of a company. This ranges from providing market opportunities to providing sales leads, business opportunities, obviously keeping track of what's happening in the market, and providing information about that, and keeping an eye on suitable business opportunities that match the offering from Finland, providing advice and training, providing specifically internationalization, market entry advice to companies that are looking to enter, for example, the US. Financial services, that's of course a little bit more in the realm of those of our partner organizations that have funding services. We at the consulate don't, but others do. And then, outbound and inbound delegations that, of course, have been a little less during COVID time, but we have pivoted to doing a lot of virtual meetings as well. And I will touch on that as well a little later. So Team Finland USA, which is what we are a part of then, is basically the American part or American arm of Team Finland. We have a presence in New York, New Orleans, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And as of right now, Los Angeles is the only location with a Team Finland coordinator, trade commissioner. It's me. that focuses solely on games and esports trade relations. And and to the best of our knowledge as well, it is the only one in the world, or I think that we think that it was the first kind of position that was created by a Ministry of Foreign Affairs of any country to work specifically in these areas. Our network consists of a number of different stakeholders in the markets. Predominantly investors, of course, the private and public companies that operate in the given country, but then also a lot of educational institutions, talent, media, governments, organizations, and so on and so forth. So I feel like that's good enough about Team Finland right now. I want to jump straight into the state of esports part, because I think this is the really interesting part here, or there's some interesting parts here, and then I can delve a little more specifically into my work with Team Finland later. So in this one, I wanted to kind of like give a slight overview. Now, a lot of this stuff is, I think, things that, of course, you guys are all studying, esports business. I'm fairly certain that most of you know this. I'm not going to dwell on this soon, but just kind of like to give a baseline, understanding of how the industry works for those who are tuning in who may not be familiar, or those who are watching later, who are just kind of like coming into this space and are wondering how the ecosystem actually works. And this is, comes the Esports Observer. It's a pretty great publication that covers esports news. That is again, like as it says here, very simplified overview of how this works, but on a very, very simple level. Teams play the games developed by publishers that are organized in leagues and tournaments, distributed on platforms like Twitch and YouTube, viewed by fans all around the world. Brands and advertisers, basically use esports as a communication channel, and they pay and they sponsor teams to get eyeballs on their brands by this very highly coveted younger audience. And then we have, of course, investors, both institutional and private investors, that are looking to get into the space, by putting money into different either technology companies or teams, and are helping to grow the market. Looking at sort of like the revenue streams from last year, obviously last year was very, very unusual, and one of the things that we have seen is of course a drop in some sponsorship deals. Like there still was like an overall growth from like 2019 to 2020, but I think from 2020 to 2021, like the latest data that I've seen, is definitely a little less. And obviously ticket sales have gone down. We've had no live events, but still the industry has broken the 1 billion mark in terms of the global revenue streams, which is great. Of course, it's dwarfed by the games industry, for example, which is an over $160 billion industry. But it's growing every year and it's looking great. What you can see here, though, that's interesting is, and it's definitely one of the bigger challenges that the industry is facing, is that the revenue streams are very, very heavily leaning towards sponsorship. So most revenues come from sponsorship and media rights, and that's definitely something that's keeping especially business managers up at night trying to figure out how to diversify revenue streams. But nonetheless, this is kind of like how this looked like last year. And one thing here also that I wanted to also kind of show, and this again to sort of like put things into perspective, especially in the US, when it comes to how the esports market stacks up when it comes to dollar value, right? This is actually not talking about viewership, because viewership, based on viewership, esports is doing really well, especially among the younger demographics. This is probably no surprise to you all, but in a lot of countries and for a lot of sports, it has overtaken traditional sports among a certain age demographic. But when it comes to monetization, and when it comes to again dollar value, even the highest value teams, and yes, it's like your TSMs, your Cloud9s, your Team Liquids, even they sort of pale in comparison with the value of these very entrenched and of course very traditional sports like the NFL and the NBA. So there's a lot of room to grow, is what I'm saying. Looking at just sort of like on a high level, where what are some of the top teams in the US right now, and what are some key figures? So in terms of like the top games, of course we have your Call of Duties, League of Legends, Fortnite, and Overwatch. These are like, and we are talking now in terms of viewership. They tend to be on top. The top teams, we have a lot of them. We actually have here in LA, headquartered here in LA, like Team Liquids, Cloud9, and one very cool thing about the Consulate in particular is that we're actually right next to Riot Games and the LCS Stadium, which is pretty cool. But in any case, so the value of the markets, so the US is the second most valuable market globally as when it comes to esports. Asia is number one. So Asia has been killing it when it comes to the size of the market, its growth, and there's a lot of they also have a lot of interest in or there's a lot of growth in mobile esports in particular in Asia, which is a little less dominant elsewhere in the world. Nonetheless, it's over 250 million estimated annual revenue for the US. About 15% of the population is interested in esports in some way, and 4 of the top 20 highest overall earners are American. I wanted to point that out because that's gonna be an interesting comparison to Finland later, especially when you compare just the population size, which is huge. Has a huge difference. Looking a little deeper into the ecosystem players, I also thought that this was a pretty cool to look at, because we've looked at sort of like how the the ecosystem works when it comes to like how the different players, how the different actors in the ecosystem work together. But my kind of good friends at Convoy VC, they're actually one of the VCs that invest in the esports space, based in the US. They've put out this blog post a little while ago. Encourage everyone to check it out. That kind of like broke down the ecosystem further into the different segments. And I wanted to put this here and kind of like just show it to you guys, because it's important to see like how much opportunity there is to get into this space and get involved and innovate, whether your interest lies in getting involved on a team level, on team management level, or whether you want to, whether you want to start a tech startup that focuses on solving one of the many challenges in esports and wants to kind of like further that goal, or whether you want to get involved on the brand side. There's a ton of opportunities. So we've got the professional scene, we've got the community side, the sponsorship, the technology is huge, and actually technology tends to be the one where of course especially VCs, venture capitalists, are most interested in, or more interested in, as those typically tend to be the companies where you can see more of that exponential growth later. And then of course we've got obviously we have the game development side of things, but even within that, just in addition to the developers, there's a whole host of other companies that are involved on the engine side and the distribution side. And then one area that's also definitely big and booming is the gambling side, which is perhaps one of the bigger differences. There's two big differences between the US and the Finnish ecosystem for sure. One is the gambling side of things, where of course in Finland we have we have it highly regulated, and sort of like we have the national kind of like betting agency that's focused on that. But in the US there is like a lot more startups and companies. There's a lot of like statewide differences. And of course we've got Nevada, the kind of like the state of gambling, and there's a lot of companies here that have found success in this space. It's still evolving, and there's a lot of challenges around regulation and so on, but it's a very, very interesting space, and definitely growing. And one thing that I had to add myself here, because Convoy didn't add them, and I suppose we are a bit of an afterthought, but that's perfectly fine, is actually the public sector. Arguably, the public sector is definitely of course, I speak from a subjective perspective, but I've seen a lot of like public support in the US as well, but definitely in the Nordics. I'll touch on that more. In this space, increasingly, it may have been slow at first. Like of course, there's we're a bit slow to the draw, so to say, to realize the potential in this. But once they did, and then they got people on board who are familiar with the space, there's also definitely associations, and there is city level support. Even here in LA, the city of LA has representatives from the esports side who are working on supporting the ecosystem, supporting the industry. So I definitely wanted to add the public sector there as another area where there is a lot of opportunity to help. And to kind of like build the ecosystem. And I forgot to mention, so aside from the gambling side, the other big difference, of course, is the educational system in the US, and just sort of the first of all, the existence of private universities, and of course these typically fairly pricey private universities, and that entire sector, which in turn kind of fuels a lot of the collegiate. There's just a lot more funding and money going into creating these massive collegiate tournaments. And then of course, again, just because by the nature of the fact that there is sort of like a culture and a history of the NFL, of the NBA, of these big collegiate level sports, it is definitely translating to esports as well. Now, conversely, let's look at Finland a little bit. So just looking at sort of like the same figures, and I wanted to do some comparison in that way. In terms of the most popular games, that these numbers may have changed slightly. This data is a little older, so don't quote me on this necessarily, because this may have changed. But from what I understand, it's still relatively obviously CS:GO has always been very popular in Finland, and I think it continues to be one of the more popular games. And again, at least a few years ago, in terms of viewership, again, CS:GO, PUBG, Overwatch, and League of Legends were some of the top games played in Finland. Of course, we've got our top teams here, and Skova, Havu, and so on. But what I wanted to really kind of highlight here is what's interesting is that although the annual revenue generated by the industry in Finland is of course very, very small compared to let's say the US, for obvious reasons. It's a much smaller market. But that being said, in terms of the number of people, for example, being interested is about the same. It's definitely growing. It's also a very young audience. I think I remember seeing in that very same report that among the 18 to 22 quadrant or something like that, watching esports actually overtook watching ice hockey. So there's more people now in Finland watching esports of that younger group than ice hockey, which I'm sure makes some parents rather sad about that. But that's just the nature of the beast here. But what's very interesting that I wanted to highlight is how, despite the size of the industry, 3 of the top 10 overall earners are Finns historically. It's too bad they weren't playing for Finnish teams at the time they did that. But that being said, it just really goes to show how much raw talent there is in Finland that needs to be cultivated, and just how many amazing players this small country generates, and it's really, really great to see. So recently we actually did a research also into just basically our own internal research into the Finnish ecosystem with my colleague Markus Maikola. He actually did a lot of the heavy lifting on this, put this really neat looking infographic together. And we are going to have a kind of a report coming out about this as well, some of the key findings. But I thought I'd share this and some of the high level findings from it with you right now. So as kind of part of an effort to really understand what are some of the key challenges, what are some of the key opportunities in Finland right now in the esports space. We ventured out to talk to as many of the different companies and the different players in the in the space as possible, and so we basically came to realize that there is obviously the teams are very important, and the teams are definitely the center. Teams and the games they play are definitely at the center of a lot of things, but there is already, as still as small and fragmented the ecosystem is in Finland, there is a lot of players across a lot of different verticals that are getting involved, whether it be service providers or of course brands, educational institutions. Case in point, like the Kajaani University right here that you guys are all part of. Publishers, of course, Clash of Clans from Supercell is one of the most well-known actually mobile esports that is being played. That is one of the few that's out there, but there's more coming, and there's more developers working on things in that space. So there is a lot of a lot of movement from across the board, which is great. So I wanted to in particular highlight some opportunities that hopefully some enterprising young minds like yourselves would consider and look into, and if you are so inclined, that there's some very interesting and some I would say some very particularly uniquely how how should I say, there's some unique strengths in Finland that that might enable some of these areas. And there's some particular needs in the ecosystem that we've uncovered. So when it comes to some of the challenges and some of the opportunities, because I like to sort of frame challenges in terms of opportunities, is what we found during this research is that there's definitely a I'm just gonna go through this like super quick, but I actually was meant to go these one by one, but never mind. I guess the animation didn't work. So one of the things, of course, a lot of you probably know this, but Finland is obviously a huge, superpower by now on the global stage, in particular in mobile gaming, in mobile free to play, and that is one area where there's a lot of opportunity for more companies to get into the space. As we get more games that are being played as esports, we get more genres, the whole ecosystem expands. So we're definitely hoping to see more, and I'm personally definitely hoping to see more great games coming from Finland. Not supposed to do that. More games coming from Finland, specifically on mobile, with 5G coming into the foray, with competitive mobile esports, played real time, becoming more and more viable as a particular unique opportunity in Finland. Another area is just tech in general. Tech innovation is, of course, again, something that Finland is pretty well known for. There is a lot of great engineering talent in Finland. Together, combine that great talent with again, with some brilliant business minds who want to solve the next big challenge in esports, whether it be again around anti-cheat or around how to engage players, while the game is being played, how to increase fan engagement and monetization. There's a lot of opportunities there. So I would love to see the next big esports tech startup to come from Finland. I would be remiss to say if I didn't mention that on the grassroots level, there's definitely there's a continued need to have more people being involved in youth programs and in training and scouting, and just getting people a career path from sort of like from an early age to when they are professionals, and there's definitely some opportunities around that as well. On the side of business innovation, this is a big one, and I've kind of alluded to it earlier when I was talking about the revenue streams and some of the issues with that, and just being so reliant on one particular revenue stream. We definitely are seeing a serious need, again, for people with business acumen skills, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, that's you, to join teams, again, whether it's like the sports teams themselves or the organizations themselves or tech startups or any other company that operates in the esports space, but in particular teams, to first of all, to be able to build, to be able to define and build a sustainable business model. And I'm talking about, the ability to be able to show a growth model, basically be able to show ROI on marketing spend for brands. These are some very, very important things that are gonna be continue to be needed right now, and will be needed in order to make these teams and make these Finnish companies viable investments for investors. And then, speaking of investors, there's another side where there's definitely a need for more specific. It doesn't necessarily have to be like just an esports specific fund, although there's definitely not one in Finland that is, or I think in the Nordics, but in Finland definitely not. That is a sort of like a sophisticated and specifically esports focused VC. It may not even be viable right now in terms of ROI, but nonetheless, there is going to be definitely a need, and I would say already right now, is for more investors that understand this market, joining funds and kind of like, taking the mantle of being the kind of like the gaming and esports investor. So, joining funds, as an investment analyst or whatever, that's a great way to get in on the ground, and kind of like be part of the journey of some of these great teams coming up. And again, of course, I'm gonna have to plug the public sector because, hey, we're actually pretty cool. No, but for reals, I actually think that definitely there is again like more need. There's more need for degree programs like this, right? I think what CompCare is doing is absolutely fantastic, and there needs to be more formal educational programs for young minds in Finland to be able to get into this space, to really understand the business side of things, and then be able to go on and do great things in the industry. But that also includes, the city level help. So, of course, we're now seeing that the city of Espoo and other cities are getting involved in the space, on the ministry level. So wherever we get more people who are evangelizing the space, it's just helps grow the whole ecosystem altogether. So yeah, it's just a couple of different career opportunities in esports that I've come across in talking with people and in meeting with people, and it's a lot, right? So it's really about figuring out what you're interested in. Whatever you're interested in is probably a place for it in esports in some way. And we've touched on a few of those, and yeah. So even a public like as a public servant, you can get involved if that is your interest. So and yes, that's us right here with my wonderful colleagues. And here I actually did want to absolutely highlight our consul general here, Stefan Lindström, who is in the middle on the picture here, because it was actually his foresight and an understanding of the potential of the space that led to him creating, basically realizing that there's a need for somebody like this, for a role like this, and creating this role, and then actually hiring for this role. And I'm going to touch on that again, like a little bit more how that came about. But it was really his vision to and his initiative to kind of like put this role in place. And he himself is also very entrepreneurial and very kind of like tech oriented, and focuses on the tech here, and watches a lot of kind of like follows a lot on what's going on in the space, and sort of we all do. And so I'm just saying, you can actually stay pretty agile and entrepreneurial even in this role if you approach it the right way. And I think I feel very, very lucky in this position in particular, being given a lot of autonomy and a lot of freedom to kind of like operate according to how fast the industry moves. So it's been tremendously a tremendously great experience. Here's just another super blurry picture. I apologize. I couldn't find a way to make it less blurry. It was a very small image. But anyway, it just gives them some more idea of all the different opportunities. You can probably find this. I actually forgot to. No, there it is, the source, Nicolas Bessoms. Anyway, so you can just see some more opportunities here. This is more important. This is something I wanted to touch on just to look at. Again, it's a little older. It's like a couple of years old. So definitely, I would be very, very surprised if some of these numbers wouldn't have changed during COVID in particular. I definitely would expect that the remote positions have increased as of last year, as a lot of companies are moving to remote and are okay with moving to remote. But anyway, from 2018 to 2019 at least, you can see that the number of positions available, and this is just a US focused one, but the number of positions in esports like more than doubled. It's like it's crazy. So it's a growing space. There is there's a lot of opportunities across the space, and it's gonna continue. I expect it. I would love to see a more recent number on this, but at least it's how it look like. I also love to see that California is, of course, one of the main employers. This is true across the games industry as well. So there's a lot of positions in available in California as well. Okay, so let me take a glass of something, or just a sip of water. It's not a glass; it's a bottle. Never mind. Anyhow, so hopefully, if you're still awake, you still have like another 15 minutes in you, because this is where I figured that like I was kind of like thinking of how to approach this part, talking about how I got to where I am and what's sort of like relevant to share. And I'll be quite honest that I don't normally, go into, all this detail, but because I was thinking that because you guys who are watching here, I remember sort of, oh God, I sound so old. I remember when I was your age. No, but but really, I do. And it was such a kind of like transformational period going from like 18 to where I am today. And that's really actually where my journey started. So for those of you who are, from what I understand, in that age range, that is pretty much where I'm going to start. And don't worry, I'll get through it quickly. But it's just kind of like, I thought it was hopefully maybe an interesting view on one particular journey and how I got to where I am working with this, as and where I am right now. And maybe there's some interesting takeaways from there. So let's start. Well, first of all, something that I didn't cover in the beginning, and I did so on purpose because I knew this slide was coming up. And that's basically that, as you could probably guess, based on my name, I'm, of course, originally not from Finland. Zsuzsa is not exactly a quintessential Finnish name. I am from a small town in Hungary. And the reason that's relevant, this is me as a tiny little human being with questionable fashion sense, right? I know, in little old Hungary. So how the heck did I get from middle of nowhere Hungary to LA working for the Finnish Consulate in Games and Esports? Okay, so everything has a beginning, and I think in retrospect, it kind of makes sense. It didn't necessarily for the longest time, but from a very early age, I kind of like had some very nerdy hobbies, right? I was the loner. I was the one kind of like playing video games and kind of like doing things in her own way. But I had like pretty much, like 4 main interests: video games, anime, heavy metal, ironically Finnish heavy metal, and this will become relevant in a second, and arts and storytelling and drawing. I loved, doing all that stuff. So, but gaming was probably one of my biggest loves. So I remember back in the day, and this was, it's like, I mean, aside from it being a guy, it's a fairly accurate representation of some of the good times that I had playing StarCraft with, and LAN parties with my friends, back when I was, I don't know, super young. But yeah, so gaming has always been a very core part of my life, and my, honestly, some of my best experiences, growing up, were absolutely from games. I'd argue that I learned a lot of the language, a lot of English from video games. And yeah, it was just something that was always a part of my life. So I kind of knew that I wanted to do something with games. I didn't know what the heck it was going to be, but Hungary at the time, and I think even still today, had no games industry, or maybe like one company. But anyway, no games industry to speak of. So there was really no opportunity for me there after I graduated high school. So there I was, as kind of a young, again, like 18-year-old nerdy Hungarian girl. I wanted to do something different, and I was like, okay, I gotta get out of here. Okay, I gotta I gotta go somewhere else. But how do I decide? Where do I go? And so of course, your decision making process as an 18-year-old. I mean, and like, I don't know, you guys are probably a lot wiser, maybe more well thought out than I was, but you may not be as well, and that's totally fine. You're 18, whatever. Like, this is the time to make all these rash decisions. But boy, am I glad I did it in the end. Anyway, my teenager brain pretty much analyzed it. Okay, I have some friends in Finland. Maybe I have some opportunity there. Let's decide: do I want to stay here? Do I want to go to Finland? Okay, well, as you can see here, my decisions came down to some very, very vitally important points that in the end ended up defining the next, decade of my life or so. So I was like, okay, let's go to Finland. They have a cool language. They, it's abroad, which is awesome. I have some friends, and they have a lot of Finnish heavy metal. So there it is. Let's do this. And this was actually around the time when Hungary joined the EU. So I have to say, I lucked out. So immediately, there was not just my initial interest in gaming, and then the complete serendipity that I made some friends for some online music forum that were mostly from Finland, and I decided that okay. And then Hungary joins the EU, so the path kind of like opened up. I was like, okay, this is my destiny. I'm gonna go, and I was very happy. And it was summertime, and it was absolutely wonderful. And the birds were chirping, and the sun was shining. And then winter struck, and of course, it was a bit of a shocker. It continued to be the shocker for the next several years afterwards, and it probably still is whenever I go back. But despite that, I was very, very happy and very lucky that I stayed, and I made some really, really good friends. And of course, I got into the games industry right away. It was super easy, and then the rest is, of course, history. Or is it? It isn't really. It wasn't that easy. I had some ideas about what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in games, but I just moved countries. I didn't really speak the language. I spoke English already at the time, so that was something I was quite. I forgot to mention it when I moved to Finland. One other thing that I was very lucky to have is that I worked on my English skills from a very, very young age, so I spoke English already at that time. So anyway, I worked in a ton of jobs that were not in games before I got into games. Everything under the sun that you can imagine, and it took me a while to actually figure out a way into the industry. And what that actually was realizing, kind of like figuring out that okay. There is a really cool mobile games company called Digital Chocolate, and I want to join Digital Chocolate. So Digital Chocolate, for those of you who don't know, is an absolute institution in video game history in Finland. Right? It's actually a US company that bought Sumeon Studio, which was the Finnish studio that became Digital Chocolate, and it is arguably one of the most influential Finnish mobile games companies that were founded by the now founders of Supercell, and it was just one of the big games companies at the time. And I knew nothing. I was like, okay, how will I do? How do I get in? Right? I had no skills. I had nothing to really do. And I actually realized that okay, I want to get in. What I could get at that point is probably like QA, right? Testing, so it's like quality assurance. And so in order to do that, I actually spent 9 months commuting to Tampere to work as a localization tester at a different company, at a whole different company, commuting from Helsinki to Tampere, that is, at a whole different company, in order to be eligible, in order to get the skills to be able to put on my CV that I know how to test, right? I have now experience in mobile testing or software, testing. And so that is how I, after a long while, and by the way, these are not in order. So the project management and marketing, those came later, but I'll get to that. Nonetheless, once I finally got in, I was like, yes, this is great. I'm in. And not only did I get in, but I was a QA, and then I applied internally to be a game designer, and I got a game design job, right? Like the little girl in me was jumping up and down and was excited. I was like, it's a dream come true. It's gonna get him. It's only going off from here on. This is gonna be amazing. And then it was the year 2008. And again, you guys don't remember this, but 2008 was a bad time to be a junior in the industry. It was a bad time to be starting your career. It was basically the financial crisis that lasted for several years, and it took the whole world a long time to crawl out of. So I basically went through a couple of layoffs. One from this dream job of mine where they had to reduce the staff, and then another one because everyone was struggling, and yeah, it was a tough time. I'm not gonna lie, it was a tough time. It was definitely a time where I had to reevaluate a lot in terms of what I wanted to do, and for a long time there, I was pretty lost about what I wanted to do, about who I was, what I really wanted to do. Gaming is what I thought I wanted to do, but it definitely hits you pretty hard, right? Like when that happens, when that rejection happens, you take it really personally, and you think, well, maybe I'm not cut out for this, right? Maybe it's not in the cards or whatever. And the worst thing that can happen is that you listen to those voices, and then you kind of like let outside circumstances tell you what you should be doing, or influence what you should be doing. And so it definitely took me a while. But don't get me wrong, during this time, I still, had some jobs. I learned a lot in different positions. I also learned what I didn't want to do, which is in and of itself a very valuable lesson, to learn what you don't want to do. And I ended up going to Aalto, get a business degree, and at the end of the day, I realized that after several years, probably longer than I should have, that I should have feffed about with this, but I realized that I needed to get back to games, right? That was my passion. I need to figure out a way to get back in. And I did. So when I finally kind of like reconnected with really what I wanted to do, I kind of like worked through that whole internal struggle about it. And that was around the time when the Oculus dev kit came out, right? When it was like 2014 or something like that, when VR kind of came back into the fold, right? When and this was a time when Finland had its first VR games company called Mindfield Games, where I happened to have reconnected with an acquaintance of mine who worked there as a CEO, and they were looking for a marketing manager. I happened to have been working in marketing before that. So again, serendipity and knowing a person in the industry and knowing a person in that particular company, and just being proactive and reaching out and asking about an opportunity. And that is how I ended up getting to work with Mindfield and work with VR, and it was just a great time. It really completely kind of like turned around how I felt about working in the space, and just I kind of like regained myself, which was really, really good. What, in addition to working with VR and working with this new technology, what this opportunity gave me is I actually got to travel to the US a lot. That's pretty much where my sort of like journey into the US kind of began. I spent a lot of time traveling back and forth. I organized a couple of different US events for Mindfield. We were at the PAX East and PAX and the PAX Prime with them. So it really kind of like what got me to solidify sort of what I was really that I actually really liked the US. There were some aspects of the country that I really liked, and in particular, I spent a lot of time in LA, and I got to really like the creative energy, the obviously the large sort of like games industry here that at the time was very vibrant, and of course, so meeting in person and all that stuff. So it was just pretty great. Not to mention, sun, can't beat the sun. The sun is great. Anyway, in the end, I kind of like think that with all the ups and downs, my experience and my journey, my time in Finland was transformational, right? I absolutely love the country. I very much feel like that it's my home, my home away from home type of thing. It's the place I think of when I think of home. And I definitely consider it as a huge success, because in the end, I did end up working in games. I did a lot of different things that gave me a lot of great perspective on the different sides of the industry and the different sides of the production. From QA to design to marketing and yes, even voice acting. If anyone ever picks up Pollen and listens to the protagonist's voice, they might find it somewhat familiar. But yes, by that time, I was kind of ready to again move on, and I really started vibing with LA, and I spent a lot of time, as I said, kind of moving back and forth and just being there. So I decided to spend more time there and just see what comes up. Like all I knew at that point that I had to sort of like a pull towards LA, and I wanted to spend more time and see what happens. So that's what I did. I spent quite a lot of time, again, just basically at this point, continuing what I love doing, right? Continuing to events, getting to know people, basically meeting people at industry events as much as I could, because I knew that eventually it's going to be important. It's the industry I want to work in. So knowing people and just kind of like, staying on top of what's happening is going to be important, even during the time when I was just trying to figure out like, okay, what is exactly that's going to come of this. And so, as they say, as they say, hindsight is 2020, right? And what that means is that there's a lot of things that happened up until a couple of years ago when this job with the consulate came up that at the time I didn't really know that how it's going to land or where it's going to land or whether it's all going to make sense. I just knew that it probably eventually will. And I realized that yes, all of these things that I've learned from dealing with some of those hardships in Finland, working in the games industry there, getting that degree from Aalto, getting an education, and then eventually moving to the US, it all led me to have that background and those skills and competences that that then made me the right candidate for this job, which came up in 2018, the latter half of 2018. And actually, a funny story about that is that it came to me, through a recommendation, through basically a former colleague of mine, from Mindfield, who is a good friend of mine to this day, who told me about the position, and I kind of like owe it to him in a way that he told me about it. And I applied, and it kind of all worked out in the end. But it wouldn't have necessarily done so if I wouldn't have gone through all this that I have, and and I wouldn't have known him, for example, letting me know about this position, and if I wouldn't have been vocal with my friends and with my network while I was here, telling them that I want to do something utilizing my network, here in the US as well as in Finland in games. Just keep an eye out for something for me. So being proactive is also something that definitely helped. So touching a little bit on what I actually do these days and what the job entails, more like on a deeper level than what I mentioned earlier. Of course, as part of Team Finland, all those advisor services, all those things that I'm talking about is kind of what I do. But how I approach the two different areas of my work is slightly different, mainly because they are actually at the different life cycle stage, right? So games is of course a lot more mature, a lot more established industry, in Finland and actually in the world. So there, my focus is very much on growing that industry, or continuing to growing that industry. And so I have a lot of activities all across the board, right? I work predominantly with games companies around providing them with market advice, providing them with market opportunities, connecting them with the local network here, and in particular, organizing a lot of events, especially during this time where before COVID hit, we did a lot of things in person, and now we've pivoted to a lot of online events as well. But so providing their services all across the boards is kind of what I do, keeping an eye on the market, keeping track of the market, sharing those insights, promoting the Finnish games industry here in the US, and sort of like vice versa, connecting people, providing advice. And the esports side of things is actually still relatively new to me. So I have been in this position with the Consulate since 2019, March 2019. And I have done a little bit of work with the esports side, but it's definitely be a little less. And it's only just a little while ago where we started to sort of like refocus our efforts more on it, and doing more specifically activities around building the ecosystem and supporting the Finnish ecosystem, building it up, providing information, providing some specifically sharing insights in how to grow the industry back home. And how does it actually look like? So I have to say again, I'm incredibly grateful for and incredibly lucky to have been able to have some of these great experiences, out here and working and in the betterment of in support of Finland and the Finnish games and esports ecosystems. So how some of this work really looks like on a day-to-day is. What's not pictured here is a lot of email sending, which of course is a little less exciting than what I put up here. But it's very much a relationships based based position where we do a lot of work, building kind of like the network and promoting, doing the bilateral trade promotion via participating in events like the ones of the Esports Business Summit, X Live, GDC, E3, many of the big notable games events, organizing our own. So those were, some of the events that we organize for individuals here, for stakeholders, and a more private event. Also, just attending events, kind of keeping in touch, obviously, with the industry. One of my favorite examples of this were from BlizzCon just before COVID, the year before COVID, which is really, really fun. And then again, connecting people on these events. So I actually run, and again, I don't have this pictured here because it's less exciting, but I actually run several executive communities that is very specifically targeted at Finnish executives connecting with US executives. And that was one of the main ways of pivoting during COVID, to make sure that the absence of physical events is not going to disrupt networking and deal making to the extent that it could. And so that's one of the aspects of the services that we provide here. So here's where we are now. It's now onwards and upwards. A couple of years into this, I've like I said, I've had really just an amazing time. Obviously, last year was very different than the first year when I started, but we have I feel like we have successfully been able to pivot to this working, and now it finally looks like that we are hopefully seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. With vaccinations rolling out, and hopefully things are going to get back to normal towards the later half of the year. And we're definitely starting to prepare for that, looking at some physical events that may actually be happening later this year, which would be great. Yeah. Okay. So I thought that like maybe at the end of this, and again I realize that it's at the top of the hour, so I tried to get through this as fast as possible, but I'm sorry for the long-winded story on this. But I thought that maybe just a few nuggets of wisdom that I thought could be interesting to share, and what I have learned, and what at least for me have proved, fairly useful in where I got to now. And there's a couple of things. I feel like one of the hardest things is to know yourself, right? Like who you are, um, what your personality type is. But the time spent on that is pretty invaluable. It's gonna take a long time, and you're not supposed to know it at 18 or 20 or even 25 necessarily. But just sort of like the continuous seeking of that truth is definitely it's trust me, it's going to pay dividends. Knowing what your intrinsic motivations are, what your passions are, and trying to a large extent following those, what your skills are, what the skills that you need to develop in order to get the things that you want, right? So all these things are super important in eventually getting those things. So even if they, you don't know exactly what it is, what that job position or whatever may look like, having an intrinsic motivation for something, whether it be esports or whatnot, is very important, and it's going to be able to guide you through a lot of the difficulties. And if you're never gonna have any setbacks in life, I mean, you're probably in the 0.001%. That is like, it's likely not gonna happen. Like at some point there's gonna be something, hopefully maybe not to the extent that some of the things that I went through, and hopefully you'll be luckier in that sense. But nonetheless, perseverance and like just being able to get up and keep going after those setbacks. Don't take it super personally. Learn from them. Don't let them affect your self-worth. Just keep going. And I think in this one, I would say maybe I learned more from Finland than I can teach you on this, because this really is at the heart of Sisu, and I think it's something that has very deeply ingrained in me as well. And it's maybe not something that I necessarily have to tell you guys, because you probably have this already, but perseverance is one of the great traits of Finnish culture. So keep at it. Building relationships have also been just incredibly important. And I'm talking genuine relationships, right? Like if you're in an industry that you love, you want to make sure that you get to know others who work in the space, right? Find peers, find mentors, find advisors. Just find people that you have shared interests with. Talk with them earnestly and genuinely, and these are truly the connections that can be hugely influential on where you end up later in your career. Have focus, but don't be super bullish. So like what I like to think of is like, keep going and keep going for what you want. But when life throws stuff at you, be ready to be nimble and flexible. It's kind of like the startup adage of sort of having that North Star of what you're going for, but be able to pivot. And if you're able to do that, that's like the best of both worlds. So just being able to be flexible in terms of, and reframing certain situations in your life, and how you get there. Like, you have the goal, but like how you get there may differ or may change over time, which is perfectly fine. And be prepared for that. Keep learning. There's just things in the world that are so incredibly fast-paced, and especially in our industry, in the tech industry, in the games and esports, new trends are cropping up all the time. Things are changing all the time. Technology is advancing at an incredible pace, we are all probably going to drop off at some point from understanding, but as long as you keep a curious mind and then just keep learning, about everything, not just about the industry, but about everything. It's been one of the best things that served me, like just being sort of like endlessly curious about other people and about the work that you do. It's really going to put you sort of above the board of everybody else. And last but not least, be kind. I went through a lot of self kind of like flagellation and self-criticism and comparing myself to others and stuff like that. And it's genuinely the worst thing you can do for yourself. Compare yourself to where you were yesterday, not where others are today, right? Like, always be kind to yourself, be forgiving, be kind to others. Don't be a pushover, but be kind. And it's going to go a long way in maintaining your mental health and maintaining, a good, positive self image. It's a competitive industry, it's a competitive space, but there's no reason that we should be too harsh on ourselves. At the end, we're playing games, we're having fun. Right. So this was my expectation on how my career went, and this was the reality. And it's perfectly fine. If yours is going to end up looking like this, that's also perfectly fine. There's always something to learn on the way. But if you're a lucky straight shooter, that's also great. But and in that case, tell me your secret. But basically, if it looks like this, nothing to worry about. It's all going to work out in the end. The last thing I wanted to share is just a goosebump moment that I had a couple of years ago on the one time when I actually got to go see the StarCraft World Championships at BlizzCon, and this was just a little bit before COVID hit. So I'm so happy that I got to go there, and it was such a great moment. Saral playing Sue, so this is just gonna take 1 second, but I wanted to show it because I wanted to end on a good fun note. That was so good. Anyway, as a StarCraft player, that just warmed my heart. But yes, okay, I know I ran over, and I apologize, Richard. But thank you, everybody, for listening. Super happy to connect with anyone who wants to follow up, who just want to chat about the work or whatever else that I do. Feel free to follow us on Finland LA. And yes, that was me. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, that was amazing. There was so much valuable information there. So I think you covered a lot of the pre-submitted questions already, because as I said, there was a lot there and a lot of really, really great information for this, trying to enter the industry and what you've done so far. So I guess first we can go a bit into questions that have been coming in the chat throughout the presentation. A bit back, I believe this is from Corey Grimm, and I believe he was talking about the report on the current state of the Finnish esports industry, and he says, when does this report come out, and where may I?
Yes. So I'm planning to put this out within the next 2 months. So if you follow us on Finland LA, we're definitely going to post it there. So that's probably the best way to keep track of it.
Okay, perfect. And another question from Corey Grimm. I believe he is working with a tournament, an academic tournament league organizer here in Finland. And he asked, could you touch a bit more on the state of academic esport leagues in California or the US in general?
Yeah, so that's a space that honestly I am still discovering myself. All I can tell you is from what I have seen is that there is a lot of activity, I think, right now Riot is just getting involved with on collegiate level. I think here in California. So there is a and from around the world. So there is from around the US. There is a lot of interest in the space, and a lot of universities have some kind of like leagues or teams. It's definitely not as sophisticated as maybe like the professional the professional market, so to say. But it's coming up, and so some of the major universities have leagues in this space. But one thing that may be interesting for Corey for sure is to kind of like, we have an event coming up that you guys can kind of like email me about this, and we're gonna have some discussions specifically about kind of like building up the ecosystem and talking about the collegiate level stuff as well. So he could message me, and then I can tell him more about that, where he can learn from some of the collegiate, because we have invited some collegiate esports program heads. And also there is an event going on, I think right now, the esports oh my gosh, business esports business summit, like university or esports business university event. Yeah, you guys maybe know about this, but that's a pretty good one to just get a good sense of what's going on. I'm actually going to be watching that myself to learn more about it, but that's actually one area that I still need to dig into more myself.
From Rob Cairo, he said, my first big esports event was very memorable as well, even if it was not as large as this one. And he also said, great presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Lots of great talks. Thank yous. Great info. Thank you very much. Ilasu, I believe this is Ilias from the Kajak Esports team, says, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. It's really interesting. You mentioned in the beginning of the discussion how esports education is important for the continuation of the industry, and that more universities should do as such. Have you ever considered taking on an educational position or role within the esports community, providing information and attempting to influence the spread of the esports degree and its understanding from within the classroom?
Oh, wow. That is, I'm very honored for him to think of me that way. You know what? Up until this very moment, I haven't. This today was just such a wonderful, experience, and it was definitely a first for me to do this. Not yet, to be honest. No, I haven't. But I don't discount it. Definitely, I would say that. One of the biggest things that I felt is that I'm feeling right now is that I'm still learning myself, right? And so I'm, as I said, and I kind of like alluded to during the presentation, perhaps it became obvious that I'm very deeply involved in the game space but the esports side of things is still something that I'm actively learning myself, and so it is absolutely fascinating. And even though I play these games and stuff, but of course the industry side of things is still something that I'm learning a lot about every day. I think that eventually, if something like that comes up, and if there's valuable information for me to share, I could definitely consider it. But I haven't until today. But this has been a really fun experience. So who knows?
Well, at least personally, I know even if you don't get into it full time, we would be more than happy to have you back at CompCure to discuss with future students, because you had a lot of great information there. So we have a question from our coordinator, Jauku, says, do you play any modern esports games?
Ah, modern. How dare you speak ill of StarCraft? So I knew this question is gonna come up, because it's like I was like, I was dreading this. This is my creds being put in question. To be absolutely honest with you, I don't. I actually am a streamer as well. I didn't mention that during the presentation, but Zsuzsa is actually my Twitch handle. So if anyone checks it out, you can probably see I'm pretty much mainly play single player, single player experiences. So a single player RPGs typically. action adventures, very story and character driven type games. That's kind of my jams. I used to enjoy competitive games to some very small extent. Like, I played a lot of Mortal Kombat. I played a lot of StarCraft, as you saw growing up. But these days, I enjoy watching them. I enjoy watching, some of the MOBAs. I enjoy watching Dota and so on. But it's too much stress for me, man. I can't do it. I can't play it.
I feel you on that one as well.
Yeah.
We have a question from Vicky, who says, networking is very crucial in the industry, which COVID has greatly hindered. Any tips for networking when physical events cannot be done, where networking typically takes place in?
Yes. Yeah, that's been definitely a very big challenge. And I feel very hard for, especially for you guys and for those who are sort of like starting out in the industry, because that, at least having that initial first FaceTime, it's so important. But I would say that Discord communities are actually great, a great starting point. So I'm involved in many of them. I run several of them, and I'm involved in many others as well. So just getting involved in the communities, either on Discord, on Facebook. I actually found Clubhouse to be pretty good for networking as well. There are specific esports related clubs on Clubhouse and regular talks on esports, where actually some pretty serious folks who work in the industry. So some guys from Riot, Activision, regularly attend or are actually part of the moderator group. So I highly recommend to utilize any and all digital networking, as much as I hate that word, but as much like digital ways of just digital water cooler moments, so to say, as possible until events come back.
Perfect. And is there any other questions in the chat? I know it is very late for you there, so I will not ask too many of these pre-submitted questions. And as I said, you already delved into a lot of them. But if I just take a look here. So here's one of I think a good one that were pre-submitted. What are currently the largest barriers for Finnish companies, especially in esports, entering the US market?
Yeah, I actually went through all of these questions that you sent, and they were all very, very good, I have to say. Like I would almost want to respond to them and then send them to you later, because I feel like there's some interesting stuff there. So
large questions with it that take a lot of time.
They're quite large, so we definitely can't go through them. But yes, in terms of that, is first of all, it kind of depends on the company that in question. So if you're talking about if you're talking about a team, for example, like for a new team organization, they're going to face very different challenges that for example, a tech startup who operates in the esports space. But for teams, unfortunately, we have found a number of different issues, and it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem, which is which makes some of these things difficult. But thankfully, you guys here who are watching are part of the solution, actually, and can be part of the solution. So for teams, what we're seeing is that the issue is sort of twofold. There's typically like the three big needs, in terms of like the talent, the business skills of the team, and then the investments going into it. It seems like that Finland is not struggling with finding really, really great players, right? As I said, there's a lot of great raw talent, but where there are issues or where some challenges are, and some significant challenges is basically finding, having the right having the right person or business managers, with the right business acumen and finance skills on the team that is able to develop these, ideally diversified and sustainable revenue streams for the team and for the organization. This is one of the biggest challenges. it's not just a challenge for Finnish teams. Don't get me wrong, but it's definitely maybe a bit more of an issue just because of sort of the more kind of like fan driven and fan created organizations. So they desperately need people with the with business skills to come in and develop sustainable business models that then be able to make the whole business more attractive as an investment target, which then in turn takes us to the other big barrier to entry, and that's sort of lack of investment into the space right now, and which is unfortunately largely affected by the first issue, is that when we have teams that have difficulty showing clear ROI, and a clear kind of like path to growth, it's definitely makes harder for an institutional investor to bet big on that team, right? So it's kind of like a multi-pronged problem, and these are some bigger, definitely some bigger challenges right now. There are other issues also around training and around mental health and supporting these teams and supporting these players, professional coaching, and just really be able to cultivate and grow world-class talent. So there's definitely a more need for that as well. And there's another big challenge that's on the legal side of things. So basically, and maybe this is like less to the barrier to enter to the US, but just like there's also issues around the legalities and the kind of like what these players are class to, and like negotiating deals for them and with them, and how to but really like being able to pay them and being able to put them on a roster on the roster so that they can stay employed and make this a viable career. There is also some issues there. So these are all kind of a combination of these things are challenges right now.
Completely understandable. Thank you for that. And as you said, these questions are quite in depth. So I think for now we will not take any more of your time. And as you said earlier, your contact information is there. And if someone from our staff can put our Discord link there, we'll be posting all of Zsuzsa's contact information and various ways you can follow her on social media in our Discord. So if you're looking for that information, you can find it there.
Yeah.
And, on behalf of everyone, sorry, continue.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I actually also just realized you could put in my @Zsuzsa. I realized that I forgot to put that on the slide because that's my personal handle. Yep. So it's just @Zsuzsa. And that's my personal on Twitter and Twitch and everywhere.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, Ilias just put the Discord link there. So if you are not in the community yet, please join, and all of contact information will be there for anyone who would like to ask more questions, because we could keep talking forever, but of course it's very late and we don't want to take more of your time. So
thank you. My neighbors will appreciate it.
Yes. On behalf of everyone here at the Kajak Esports and Kajak University, we really appreciate you taking this time today, especially with the time it is there, and giving us such valuable information. So very much thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you,
bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a great rest of your day if you're in Finland, and if you are in the US, good night. We'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone.